I first met Jerry Blanton in the 1970s when I performed at my first KKYX River Festival. And I was really green and inexperienced, and Jerry really made me feel welcome. Jerry worked with me on almost all of my self-produced indie country records, and on the last one in 2018, I interviewed him and had the good sense to record it. Jerry, how do you think of yourself? Musician, songwriter, singer, maker of steel guitars?
Well, I try not to think of myself too much because I get confused. When I built steel guitars I started in 1964, actually having a shop to build them in and everything just kind of just fell into place. And when I decided to build a house, it kind of designed itself, and that's just kind of the way I do things. If it feels good, you do it, and if it don't, you try to stay away from it.
How did you get started in music?
My father gave me a guitar when I was 9 years old, and he paid for 12 lessons. And I got my first playing gig when I was 10, playing what we call deadhead for an old-time fiddle player, playing rhythm guitar. And I remember going down to San Antonio Music, which at the time was down by the courthouse, and I bought a brand new Gibson B25. Cost me $55, and I thought, man, I'm ready for Hollywood. And I managed to get a pickup on it and played through an amplifier, and that's how I got that gig playing rhythm guitar for the old-time fiddle player. And that was a real experience in my life. I made more money than my mother did, and she was working like 6 days a week, and I was playing like 3.
And how did you become associated with George Chambers?
Well, there's a lot of that I don't really remember correctly. Excuse me. But I met George in high school, and that had to be sometime in the middle 50s. I graduated in 1955, but I think that I may have played some music with George before we graduated. He was a year behind me, and I'm older than he is. And as soon as I got out of high school, I went into the Army. And I spent all my time jumping out of airplanes over in Germany and playing in bands over there. And then when I came home, I ran into George at San Antonio College, and we ended up putting a band together, and we named it the Country Gentlemen, and just kind of went from there. And I guess that hung together until probably around 80 or 85, somewhere along in there. And I went my separate ways, and he put together a group called the Black Market Band, which was with some of the original guys, and we just kind of scattered. And now we get together every now and then, but I guess George and I met back when I was probably a junior in high school, which would have made him a sophomore, I guess.
If you will, talk about some name acts that you backed when you were in the Country Gentlemen.
I remember a guy, my memory's getting weak, but I remember a guy named Jimmy Klein. We called him Hooks Klein, Jimmy Hooks Klein. He would get dates for us, and what he would do, he would buy an act like Willie, for like $300, and bring him down here and buy us for like $100, and sell the package, for maybe $1,000, and everybody made a little money. But for somehow or another, I guess it's because of Jimmy Klein, that I remember we worked with Charlie Walker, and we worked with Willie and a few other acts, and then it began to really catch on. Of course, we were still doing our own thing, 90% of the time, but having to work with headliner acts off and on. And then it started getting more and more of that kind of work, and then Bill Rohde comes along in our life, and he worked with KKYX Radio, and he started this thing called the River Festival, and hired us as the staff band for the River Festival. Bill Ruddy was a major influence in our lives and in our music. And he was a fantastic person and a great entertainer. He did a Elvis Presley act that was just really awesome, funny. But he was a great singer. Anyway, about that same time, we were working a few dates with Willie and Coach Darrell Royal from the University of Texas. Put together this thing that it was an invitational celebrity golf tournament, and they hired us to be the staff band for that. And then the Gatlin brothers kind of did the same thing in Dallas, and we got all of that work. It was like we didn't have any objections to trying to back somebody up when we wouldn't have a chance to rehearse. We just have to just eyeball it, and just do the best we could. And we murdered some of the acts. We worked. That's how we met you. Is it, when you came out with the wrong side? What was it called? The wrong side of. Can't remember the name of your hit at the time at Kicker.
Wrong Side of the Rainbow.
Wrong Side of the Rainbow. Yeah.
It's a Whitey Schaefer song.
Oh, it was. I didn't know he wrote that. I don't know. I just assumed that you did. But anyway, that was the kind of work we were doing then, and it's like it just kept us pretty busy. And that we always had players that were gutsy enough to just try, and that's about all we could do. And I remember more than once, they'd go out to during a river festival here in San Antonio. They'd go out to the airport and pick up some act that just flew in from Nashville. Get out of the car and walk him right up to the stage and hand him a guitar, and he'd have to go to work, and he didn't know what he was going to do, much less the band, so we just winged it.
Now, who would you say are your musical influences?
Back when I was kind of cutting my teeth, Lefty Frizzell and Farron Young and Webb Pierce and there was a lot of them that were just a flash in the pan, and some of them that really hung in there. And then later on, Charlie Pride and some of the other acts replaced them. But for some reason or another, the main name that comes to the forefront right now is George Jones. I don't think he ever did anything I didn't like, and I loved his players. He had... him and a friend of ours had a club up between New Braunfels and Seguin on the lake up there. And I remember Jones would come down and work with us. He wouldn't bring his band. He'd just work with us, just to promote the club and so forth. And he was always real good to us. And once in a while, some of his band members would come with him. And we learned so much from those players, those road hawks, we called them. They traveled all over the country with their bosses, and they were studio worthy, in my opinion. And I remember a guy named Charlie Justice, a fiddle player, that we had learned that when somebody's playing, you stay out of his way. You don't play when they're playing. And we noticed that he didn't do that. That he kind of, if I was playing, he wouldn't play. But he came over to me and he told me, he says, if you hear what I'm doing and you think you can help me with it, he says, jump in on me. He says, I like it when And so we started playing our fills and so forth, and listening not just to the vocalist, but whose ever turn it was to play the fill and what he was playing. If you had something to kind of augment that, you jump in there with it, and it really changed the sound of the band. And it was all because of these Roadhawks that, they knew the rules and how to do it.
Of steel guitar players, who would you say has been the biggest influence on your style of playing?
Jimmy Day.
Jimmy Day.
Absolutely. I'm not Buddy Emmons is an unbelievable player, super world-class player. But Jimmy Day was he said that if speed was dominant, rabbits would rule the world. and I never was a fast player, so I always had a tendency to listen to people whose stuff I could copy, But he not only was a slower player, he was the most soulful player of all of them. And he also sang that way. He was the most soulful singer you ever heard in your life. He could sing Mary Had a Little Lamb and make you cry.
As a professional musician, what have been some of your biggest frustrations?
Seriously, my biggest frustration, and I'm not trying to sound humble, but I never did learn to play. My technique is just really crummy, and my ability on guitar and pedal steel guitar, I've always made my living doing it, and I know that I'm better than some people, but I'm really not very good. I think that I have, all through my life, I've been overpaid, for the work that I did. I don't know. The biggest hang-up I ever had was just, the aggravation of not being to execute something that I heard in my head.
Well, finally, how do you want to be remembered?
Well, I'm not sure I care. I'm not going to be here. It'd be cool to be able to, walk along, nobody be able to see you and say, "Hey, do you remember Jerry Blanton?" Yeah. Oh, what'd you think of him? Oh, well, never mind. Maybe I don't want to hear this. I've never thought of that. I don't know. One thing it's always been kind of embarrassing to me is, I build steel guitars. That's what I'm known for primarily. And I've done a lot of dates with Johnny Rodriguez, and he and I are old friends, and I love him like a brother. Anyway, his band was always ragging on me because while I was building steels and had my shop and everything, I got a lot of write-ups in trade magazines, Guitar Player, and I think they had a Steel Guitar Player magazine and a few other things. And people would call and interview me over the phone and so forth, asking questions and so forth. So my name was out there, and I remember going to Europe with Rodriguez, and the band was ragging on me. Said, "Well, we're going to get over there. Ain't nobody going to know who you are." I said, "Well, cool." So the first thing we did, we ended up in Switzerland, and we was on this tour bus, and we pulled up to this venue, and there's a banging on the door, and the driver opened the door, and some kid he was an American, he didn't have an accent anyway. This is in Switzerland. He says, "Is Jerry Blanton on the bus?"
I wish you could stay here forever, so I could play more music with you. Now you've gone your way, soon I'll go mine. I just can't get enough of you. Close to the end, you took my hand. I will remember as long as I can. And now that you're gone, I'm feeling blue. I hope you somehow know that I just can't get enough of you. Two people making music through a lifetime, a story about me and you. I hope that you know that wherever you are, I just can't get enough of you. Close to the end, you took my hand. I will remember as long as I can. And now that you're gone, I'm feeling blue. I hope you know that I just can't get enough of you. I hope you know that I just can't get enough